Welcome everyone to lesson 5 in chapter 9. We're going to talk about factoring trinomials. So before, remember, we had two binomials and we'd multiply them and then we would get a trinomial. So what we're going to do is basically they're going to give us a trinomial and we have to find out what goes in the two parentheses that multiply to make it. Alright, here's how you do it. What you look at is you look at the third term and you say to yourself, what are the factors of this? So what are the factors of 12? But these factors have to add up to 7. So a little trick we do sometimes is we go like this. We write 12 here and then we write 7 here. And we have to guess and check to find out what multiplied to what will equal 12. But when you add them together, it will equal 7. So let's try this. Well, 1 multiplied to 12, that equals 12. But if we add 1 plus 12, we get 13. So that will not work. 2 multiplied to 6 is 12. That's true. Let's try adding them. 2 plus 6, well, that equals 8, and we want it to equal 7. So that won't work. Lastly, we know that 3 multiplied to 4, that equals 12. And if we add 3 plus 4, we get 7. So 3 and 4 both worked. Now, let's look at how we set up our equation. Look up here for a second. We know that this term multiplied to this term will give us the first term. So we definitely have to put an x here and an x here. Let's check that. X multiplied to x equals x squared. The next part we need is we need to find out what multiplied to what equals 12. Well, we already found out that 3 multiplied to 4 equals 12. Let's check that. 3 multiplied to 4, that will give us 12. Remember, the middle term is formed when we do x multiplied to 4 and we get 4x, and then we do 3 multiplied to x and we get 3x, and when we add those two middles together, then we get 7x, and sure enough, it works. So fill this in down here. We knew that 4 goes here and 3 goes here. It does not matter where you write them. You can write the 3 first or the 4. But this is how we do it. Alright, here's a little cheat sheet to help us know when we use plus signs and when we use negative signs and so on. So, if we have two plus signs here, then we know that our two parentheses will have plus signs also. Everything will be positive. So, real quick, what times what is 6? But it adds to 5, and you already figured it out. 3 multiplied to 2 is 6, but if you add it, it's 5. So, if that's just my example. That's what we'd put in there. What happens if the third term is positive, but the middle term is negative? Well, that means that you have a negative multiplied to a negative that equals a positive. But when you add a negative to a negative, you get a negative. Okay, let's look at an example. If this is our trinomial, x squared minus 5x plus 6, we say to ourselves, what times what will be 6, but it will add to negative 5? And that answer will be negative 2 and negative 3. Because negative 2 multiplied to negative 3 is 6, but negative 2 plus negative 3 equals 5. So that's why we put negatives. That's why these are both going to be minus signs. Let's look at our next example. In this example, we have x squared plus bx minus c. And so what will happen here is one of our factors will be negative and one will be positive. And let me show you how to determine that. So let's set up our x chart and let's put negative 6 here, and then let's put 1, our sum, here. And remember, we have to say to ourselves, what plus what, or I'm sorry, what multiplied to what is negative 6, but if you add them together, you get 1. And I'll show you what it is. We know it's going to be a 3 or a 2, but it will be 3 multiplied to negative 2. Because if we do 3 multiplied to negative 2, we get 6. But 3 plus negative 2 is positive 1. So you want the bigger number, with the plus sign if the b is positive, if this is positive. So remember that when we look at this one. Okay, and now we're going to look at this one. Here we have x squared minus bx minus c. So what do we have to do? We have to say what multiplied to what is negative 6. So I write my negative 6 here. But when I add them together, I get a negative 1. So again, I'm going to go back to my 3 and my 2. But this time, I'm going to write negative 3 multiplied to positive 2. And watch what happens. Negative 3 multiplied to positive 2 is negative 6. But if I add them, negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. So in this sense, or case, you want the larger number to be negative because when you add them, it's negative. Alright, I am not going to do this entire page with you. It'll take forever. But because I'm going to do some, and then I want you to pause and you to try. So here we go. So remember, this first term has to be g times g. So go ahead, write g multiplied to g. So that's this. Then we have to say to ourselves, what multiplied to what is 10, but we'll add to 7. So you probably already thought of it. 2 multiplied to 5. 2 times 5 is 10, but if you add them, it's 7. So now they're both positive. So I'm going to say g plus 2, g plus 5. And it will work because 2 times 5 is 10, and 2 times g is 2g, 5 times g is 5g. Add those together, you get 7g. Let's try the next one. Here we have d squared, so I need to write a d here, and I need to write a d here. Next, I'm going to make my x chart, and I need to say to myself, what multiplied to what is 42, but when you add it, you get negative 17. Now this one you might have to think about a little bit. I know that 3 multiplied to 14 is 42. I also know that this is like example 2 from the other page where this is positive but this is negative. So that tells me I have 2 negatives added together to get that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say negative 14 multiplied to negative 3 will give me positive 42. And if I add them together, I'll get negative 17. So minus 3 minus 14. Let's look at our next one. Well, we know what to write here. We need to write m here, and we need to write m here. Okay? Then we have to look at our c. So this is negative 27, and this is positive 6. I need to say to myself, what times what is 27, but if I subtract them, I'll get 6. Now I know that it's going to be 9 times 3, because 9 minus 3 is 6, and 9 times 3 is 27, but I'm going to make this positive 9 and this negative 3. It will look like this. M plus 9, m minus 3. And if I do that, 9 minus 3 is 6. So it works. Here we go, another example. So I look and I see p is squared, so I'm going to write p here and here. Then I'm going to do a quick little x here, and I'm going to say what multiplied to what is negative 18, but it adds to negative 3. So, because this is negative, what I have to say to myself is what multiplied to what is 18, but if I subtract them, I get 3. And I know that 6 multiplied to 3 is 18, but if I subtract them, I get 3. So what I'm going to do is go negative 6, positive 3. Negative 6, positive 3. And watch what happens. Negative 6 plus positive 3 is negative 3. What I want you to do to save time is I want you to pause the video and then try number 5 and see if you're right. Did you get v plus 20 and v plus 1? Because 20 plus 1 is 21 and 20 multiplied to 1 is 20. Try this one. Hit pause and try this one. How did you do on this one? Did you have m plus 10 and m minus 2? Because 10 multiplied to negative 2 is negative 20, and 10 plus negative 2 is positive 8, our middle term. Try number 7 and hit pause. Did you end up with k minus 5 multiplied to k minus 5? Because negative 5 multiplied to negative 5 is positive 25, and if you add negative 5 to negative 5, you get negative 10. Try number 8. Hit pause. Did you end up with a plus 3 and a plus 10? Because 3 multiplied to 10 is 30, but if you add 3 and 10, you get 13. Last one. Try this and hit pause. Alright, did you get x minus 2 and then x minus 9? And if we check, negative 2 multiplied to negative 9 is 18, and negative 2 plus negative 9. Alright, here's some more challenging trinomials. We're going to have a variable squared, but we're also going to have a variable in the third term that was not in the first. So, let's start off the normal way. What multiplied to what is h squared? So, we need an h and an h here. So, we have h multiplied to h is h squared. So, there's our first term. Now, we have to say to ourselves, what multiplied to what is negative 77, but if you add it together, you get negative 4. Just really quick, I say to myself, 7 multiplied to 11 is 77, and if I subtract 11 minus 7, I do get 4. Taking that knowledge, I'm going to do negative 11 here and positive 7 here and check it. Negative 11 plus 7 is negative 4. But what am I missing here? I'm missing a k. So I'm going to make sure I have a k on both of those because I need that k squared. So here's what it's going to look like when I write it in. I'll write h minus 11k and then h plus 7k. Now I'm going to check it. Negative 11k multiplied to 7k is negative 77k. Negative 77k squared, sorry. Now if I add these together, negative 11k plus 7k, that should add to negative 4k. It worked. I want you to try this one. Let's set it up with an x. Okay, starting off, I know that I need x in both of my first spots here because x multiplied to x will give me x squared, so that's done. Now I have to say to myself, what multiplied to what is 24y squared, but if I add it, it adds up to 11. So I need to do my factors of 24. I know that 8 multiplied to 3 is 24, and if I add 8 plus 3, I get 11. The only thing I'm missing here is the variable y. Let's check it. 8y multiplied to 3y is 24y squared. 8y plus 3y equals 11y. I've got it. And they're all positive, so that made it much easier. There you go. Alright, if you want to hit pause and try these next two, you can. So try this one first. Try and set up the x, hit pause, and see if you get what I get. Here's what I got. I got v plus 8w, v minus 6w. Let's check it. 8w multiplied to negative 6w gives me negative 48w squared. And if I add 8w plus negative 6w, I get 2w. Okay, try this one. Here's what I got. I got m plus 3n, m minus 20n. Double check. Negative 20 multiplied to 3 is negative 60, and I have n squared. Then negative 20n plus 3n brings me down to negative 17n. Okay, so that's how you do it. Let's try the practice problems. Here are the practice problems. Bring any questions you have to class next time we meet. Take care.